In a world where there are so many high-profile video games releasing, it is sometimes easy for smaller titles to get lost in the shuffle. Hell Is Us was sadly one of those titles, but I have been excited to play it for so long that it remained a top priority for me. This game hooked me with its premise of no maps, no quest markers, and no guidance. Your progression in this game depends solely on what you decipher from conversations, notes, and visual cues. This unique gameplay balanced with action hack and slash combat is what to expect from Hell Is Us, but is it a title that I recommend making time for? What's up? How's it going, people? Welcome to Casual Gamer Reviews. If you want to support the channel, please consider leaving a like and subscribe, or if you don't like it, then leave a thumbs down and let me know how I can be better for you. Hell Is Us took me 22 hours to complete, reviewed on Xbox Series X. Hell Is Us is a third-person action game where the whole gameplay loop revolves around solving mysteries to progress. The two distinct sides of this coin are combat and exploration. Let me start with the combat. There are 4 weapon types: sword, glaive, twin axes, and greatsword. Each have a quick attack and heavy attack which can be charged, and each weapon type has its own attack style, so you can switch between them to find what suits you best. There is also a dodge and parry mechanic to pad out what seems at first blush to be a pretty basic combat system. The parry is utilized to build up a stagger meter where you can perform a riposte to instantly kill an enemy. While these were always fun to use, there are a couple of animations per weapon that can appear, and almost all of them looked janky. They would clip through an enemy, or sometimes the hit wouldn't quite line up with the enemy placement, and it was a little glaring. Where Hell Is Us takes its own unique spin is with the health and stamina bars. This game is tied to stamina-based combat like From Software's Best, or honestly any action RPG nowadays, but there is a slight alteration. The stamina bar is tied to the health bar. This means that your stamina will only recover as much as your health and no higher. This felt insane to me at first, but after spending longer with it, I thought it actually worked really well. It encourages healing often, and the way to do that in this game has a process I've never seen before. It works sort of like the rally system in Bloodborne, where you must attack to get a chance to heal, but then you have to execute a timed button prompt to be successful. How this works in practice is as follows. When you attack an enemy, you get a ring of energy that forms around you. When you take a pause from attacking, this ring will let off a short, quick pulse. It is during this pulse that you must press the right bumper to execute the heal. The more attacks you land without being hit, the bigger this pulse will be, meaning your healing effect will be greater. This generates a cycle of not spamming attacks and being more measured with going on the offense, as if you get hit you will lose your heal. I understand some people may be frustrated with this, and there are consumable health packs you can use to heal, but they are not refillable and you must find them out in the world, meaning they are not reliable to depend on. This healing system took a little while to become accustomed to, but it does click and feel pretty good when you get to that point. It makes large group encounters far more tense as you are locked in trying to not get hit. I played this on the normal difficulty and didn't think it was anything too serious, but I would be lying if I said I didn't die a good few times over the course of the game. Playing on the higher difficulties, I can imagine Hell Is Us would become a considerable challenge. There are upgradable and equipable items that further enhance the combat. Firstly is that each of your weapons have 2 levels assigned to them. The first level is called its grade and sits between 1 and 5, which is upgradable at the blacksmith when you have enough resources. This mainly increases damage in a major way, but also unlocks glyph slots, which I will touch on shortly. The second level is dependent on weapon use, and will only get experience when you kill an enemy using it. This will increase damage in a minor way, but also increase your limbic energy capacity. What the hell is limbic energy capacity? I imagine is what you're thinking. Bear with me as it gets a little complex here, but I'll try my best to explain. Hell Is Us has 4 limbic spheres, which I suppose you could call this game's elements. These spheres are rage, terror, ecstasy, and grief. You can imbue your weapons with one of these limbic spheres, but they don't work in the way you would expect. There are no elemental resistances or weaknesses, they simply exist to allow you to assign certain glyphs to your loadout. Glyphs are essentially powers that can be assigned to a quick wheel and used in combat but restricted by a cooldown. To be honest, I didn't play around much with this as what I had didn't really seem to be that effective. My main weapon was aligned with grief and my secondary weapon was aligned with terror. Some powers were useful useful, like the Grief's healing buff or the Terror's AoE slam, but mostly I didn't really see much of an effect of the other moves, especially as you move on to higher level enemies deeper in the game. There are probably better ones that I am missing out on, especially as I didn't even try Rage or Ecstasy, but the game didn't inspire me to explore these offerings, and I can only consider that as a flaw. These limbic spheres are also present in enemies and defensive gear. Enemies have the capacity to have a presence erupt from within them, making them invulnerable until it is defeated. This presence will come in the form of one of the limbic elements represented by their color. Rage is red, Grief is blue, yellow is Ecstasy, and green is Terror. As I said, there are no elemental resistances or weaknesses, so all this represents from an enemy perspective is the moveset that they will have. A lot of these are quite erratic and hard to predict, so they definitely make the combat more challenging, which isn't a bad thing. As for defensive gear, they are also aligned with a limbic sphere, but once again, the only effect this has are what special powers are available to them. This felt even less relevant as the defensive gears come with preset powers, so you can't chop and change anyway. You can equip 2 defensive gears at any time, and their grade can be upgraded just like weapons. These items will give you buffs like damage and stamina reduction, and also passive powers like becoming more powerful at low health or increasing damage if you don't get hit. From what I could see, there are more than 15 of them to find across the game. Sticking with the gear, Helizas also has relics in which you can equip 2 of, one passive and one active. Passive relics give you a buff when a certain action is performed, such as increased damage after a parry or increased healing pulse effectiveness. The active relics are their own special move which will be tied to a cooldown. These are often AoE moves and are quite powerful. Lastly for combat is your trusty drone. Throughout the game you can find modules for your drone which can unlock certain moves. You can have 4 of these equipped at any time, and they are also tied to a quick wheel and cooldowns. These drone moves I found myself interacting considerably more with when compared to the limbic moves on my weapons, as they were just more useful. One of the moves causes the drone to distract an enemy, effectively taking them out of the encounter for a while. It cannot be understated how useful this move is, as you are often dealing with large groups. Another causes the protagonist to spin around with an AoE slash or propel him forward at high speed for large damage. I did get a lot of use out of the drone. These cannot be upgraded in the same way as everything else, but as the game goes on you can find higher level modules for the same move which will increase their duration or attack power. In summary, there is a lot of moving parts and customization available to you when it comes to the combat, with the variation of weapon types, glyphs, defensive gear, relics and your drone, but I can't shake the feeling that the elemental system might just be too complex for its own good. What good is the customization if you don't want to interact with it? The far better side of the game though is the exploration. As I said in my intro, it was this no hand-holding, lack of direction exploration which made me notice Helizas in the first place. On paper it sounds fascinating, and in reality I thought the execution was superb. Helizas has quests which could be main quests, side quests, good deeds or mysteries. They are all presented in your datapad as pieces of information you have acquired, but nothing more. Side quests and main quests often blend into each other and service the overall story, whereas good deeds are to help the many distraught NPCs of Hidea, and the mysteries often lead to treasures. There are no map markers, no quest log, you don't even have a minimap. You must extrapolate from dialogue and notes you discover where to go and what to do. All you have is a compass you can equip in your quick slots to give you a sense of direction, and that is it. You can also place notes and hand-drawn maps and anything useful like that in these quick slots, so you don't always have to go into the menu screens when trying to find something or solve a puzzle, which I thought was a really nice touch. This may sound daunting to those on the outside, as it's quite unusual for a video game to be this standoffish, but I honestly thought it was amazing. I loved exploring and cycling through notes and listening to what people had to say to try and pick up information to proceed. When speaking to characters, you get dialogue options to progress your main or side quests, but for each of them you also get the option to ask them generally about the world for extra lore building, which I thought was a great carrot for the player if they want to learn more like myself. If you just wanted to stick to the main quests, it's not that oppressive and you can do it without having to physically take notes or anything like this, but some of the mysteries and side puzzles would span across multiple locations, and in these instances I would definitely recommend taking notes. Helizas is not an open world but more an open zone game. You get access to a vehicle very early which will be used to transport you to a new area via cutscene. You cannot travel between areas in game and only via a cutscene, so each location is its its own open zone to explore. Some are quite small and some are large, sprawling areas with many different routes to explore. This game is not straightforward and can be quite tricky with its puzzles, but it does give you everything at your fingertips and it leaves it up to you to figure out how the pieces slot together. I would say at times that this even felt masterfully done. What made me feel so invested in this exploration and discovery with such little direction was the world setting. This land of Hadia is such a deeply sorrowful country that I just wanted to learn as much as I could. Let me break this down further for you, as Hell Is Us does not hold any punches when it comes to its story. Playing as protagonist Remy, you infiltrate your home country of Hadia, where you fled as a little boy in search of your parents. Hadia is completely torn apart through the civil war that erupted between the Palamists and Sabinians. These seem to be the two groups that everyone in this country fell into. They fall into the religious and colonial categories, and like history has told us in the real world, these kinds of conflicts can be gruesome. Some of the imagery in Hell Is Us is truly horrifying. We are talking about hatred-fueled genocides on both sides of the war. You see the remnants of mass hangings, pits filled with corpses, read suicide notes, see and hear the connotations of rape, witness complete destruction of towns and cities, and discover evidence of torture. Everyone is justifiably gloomy and depressed, and to top it all off, there now walks these disgusting humanoid creatures with no face. In an event called the Calamity, these beings, called Hollow Walkers, appear and become the final nail in the coffin for this already deeply twisted dystopia. Finding the source of these Hollow Walkers and stopping the Calamity is one of your overall missions, and the discovery of their creation is as disturbing as the rest of the stuff I have already described. Although this may feel like an incredibly dreary world, the way it is structured with the lack of guidance and forcefulness on the player to read, listen to, and ultimately interact with the world, it results in such a high intrigue you just want to poke at the fabric and see what's underneath. The story is told through an interrogation that Remy, the protagonist, is having with this Jabba the Hutt looking thing. It is a recounting of his memories of exploring the land, which is an interesting setup, but ultimately one that I don't think matters that much, as all of the juicy content is in Hadia itself. This dark and gritty setting is helped greatly by the visuals of Hell Is Us. As I said, the imagery is deeply unsettling, whether it be environmental or the characters like Jabba we were just talking about, but I do have some issues with it. Firstly is the animations. They can be incredibly janky at times. As I mentioned earlier, the riposte animations can be really hit and miss, but also some of the combat in general, especially in larger groups, can look really off. I did have some noticeable frame dips in certain areas too. The enemies themselves are these block white humanoid slender looking beings with holes in their faces. They walk and run in such creepy ways it will make you squirm. This combination is amazing visually. That is until Act 2 of course, where you realise that they are always the same enemies. I think there is only 4 or 5 enemy types, and for a 20+ hour game it gets a bit monotonous. I thought the human character design was very good though, and for a AA game some of this rendering was pretty impressive. The main characters, Remy and his sidekick Tanya, always look great in cutscenes and in interactions with other characters. The voice of Remy is performed by Elias Toufexis, who is best known for playing Adam Jensen from Deus Ex, and the voice of Tanya is voiced by Patricia Somerset, who is best known for voicing Princess Zelda in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Given this prestige, it is unsurprising that the quality of voice acting is high across the board, including all the NPCs. It was really amazing to see this, especially as some characters you will only speak to once or twice. It was really important to get this right, as listening to audio clues as well as being immersed in this world are pivotal to what makes Hell Is Us the game that it is, and the voice work is crucial to this vision. The first person you meet in this cruel world is the old man Ernest Cadell, who is hiding out in his farm, and the gravelly coarseness of his voice was so raw and instantly noteworthy. This high bar remained for the whole game. As for the soundtrack, it is rather forgettable. The whole OST is composed of eerie beats with heavy bass to give you that dark tone. It is fitting for the dire situation you find yourself in, but when there is little variance to the overall sound, it just becomes white noise. Most of the side content in Hell Is Us will involve you moving from one location to another, off a hastily written note you find on the floor somewhere. These mysteries are intricately written that you need to rely a bit on your memory of visual clues from previous eras with the little written or said in your discovery. You could find a note for a safe code for a safe that was thrown in the trash, but have to rack your brain to remember if you saw that anywhere. Or maybe you find a key to a car and have to remember what areas even have cars in to explore. I loved these and I completed all that I found, but I'm sure there was a lot more I didn't find. Sometimes these mysteries will just be a chest to open in which you need the right item. There is no puzzle to solve here, it simply relies on you finding the item in another area and then retracing your steps to try and remember where the chest was. These were less fun, but at least they had good rewards for the most part. Good deeds, which I touched upon earlier, are mini side quests that you can do to help out certain NPCs. There isn't really much to them. Most of the time it would be randomly finding an item and trying to remember if you heard anyone speak about wanting or needing it. These mostly serve world building and cause characters to interact with each other or move location, which is rewarding in itself with a world this deeply crafted. But it is worth noting that a lot of these are missable as certain story beats will cause shifts in the world state. The last piece of side content are the research items and vaults. Littered throughout Hadia, you can find objects of the past which are called research items. If you bring these to Tanya, she will research them and each item will then get additional lore to help with the world building. More importantly, if you bring enough of them to her, she will sometimes drop a vault code for a hidden vault somewhere out in the world. It is then up to you to find this vault using a brief one-liner you are given and enter the code to gain access to many valuable treasures. These were by far the most rewarding piece of side content. Hell Is Us is a game that has an exceptionally interesting take on exploration and puzzle solving. Its lack of hand-holding and map markers is refreshing, and the need to explore and obtain information is made a complete joy due to the intense world setting and story. The characters are voiced to a very high standard and the side content is plentiful. While the combat is not terrible, it does have an overly complex system that doesn't feel fun to engage with, although I cannot deny that there is a respectable amount of player customization. I do wish that there was more visual variation with the enemy design, less janky animations, and a more memorable OST, but ultimately it is hard to ignore the amazing exploration, story, and world lore. Hell Is Us gets a casual gamer score of 7.5 out of 10. Please check out the channel for my Ghost of Tsushima 2025 review, or maybe you want to see what games came out in October, which I also have a video for. If you want to support the channel, please consider leaving a like and subscribe, or if you don't like it, then leave a thumbs down and I will try to be better next time. Let me know in the comments below if Hell Is Us is on your radar after this review, and for everything else, casual gamer, keep it here. Peace and love.